Joining us, this is the Senate Ethics Committee. It is Monday, February 27th, 6 p.m. If I could, I'd like to ask Senator Harbin if he would open up with prayer. What's your number?
Thank you, sir. You got me on. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for the day that you've given us. We ask that you would give us clear guidance and wisdom in the days to come and for today. And thank you for the blessings that you've given us. And we will give you all the glory in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. Let me first lay out some ground rules and how we want to do this evening's business. Last week on the 23rd, we were unable to receive all of the testimony that was requested and signed up for. And I want to make sure those individuals have a chance to provide input. But I'd like to indulge those individuals with a request. We only have one bill on the agenda for this evening. That's SB 222, a substitute. It might be best for us to hear the substitute, take testimony, and then decide on any potential action. We've heard SB 222 before, and I'd just like to have a chance to share that with the committee and with those present and with those online. So if there is no objection, we'll look at 222 first, SB 222 substitute first. It'll take maybe 10 minutes. It's a fairly short bill. And then we'll accept testimony. Is that agreeable? Committee?
Yes.
Is that agreeable? All right, thank you. I'm going to ask Senator Williams, the vice chair, if he would assume the chair, and I will provide the input.
Sir. Yes, sir.
All right, you're live and you may proceed, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we have a substitute for SB 222. It is LC 472317S. This is the same bill that we heard last week. There are very, very few changes. I would like to point out that in section 1, the only change is on line 41. We've increased the nominal value from $100 to $200. And let me get the right revision here. And we have removed section excuse me, make sure I get this right.
The disco. Oh.
No other changes in section 1. There is one change.
Board call.
If you'll note, on line line 40, the word individual services provided by individuals without remuneration. So the word individuals was inserted. The nominal value was increased from $100 to $200. And then on lines 65 through 70. 68 through 70 was removed. 68 through 70 was removed. Are there any questions? Let me back up. Make sure we get this right. On line 65, the word funding was removed. So it currently reads on line 60, it's moved up just a tad. On line 62, no board of registrars shall take or accept any grants or gifts for the purposes of administering this chapter from any source other than the strike the governing authority, the state of Georgia or the federal government. That's in section 3. That mirrors lines 49 through 52 in section 2. No superintendent, county or municipality shall take or accept any grants or gifts for the purposes of administration in this chapter from any source other than the Secretary of State or the federal government. And I would say, Mr. Chairman, I would say those are the only changes. And again, lines 68 through 70 were omitted. And on line 80, there is no line 80. All of section 3 was taken out. All of section 3 was taken out.
Mr. Chairman, can we just verify what LC number we're working with?
We're working on LC 2317S. And the prior LC was LC 47226. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Chairman, I think for clarification, I think he's flipping back and forth from the original bill to the.
To the sub.
So when he goes from one line
To
at
another.
line 80, it's really in the previous bill. So you
Yeah,
got.
I am indeed.
I
Thank you,
was
Senator.
following your lead on that.
Right.
Flipping back and forth.
Right. So what you have is a nominal change to SB 222. I would point out, let's make sure you see this carefully. Section 1, subparagraph D. Any county, municipal government employee, election official who is taken or otherwise accepted from any person or a contribution, donation, service, or anything else of value for the purpose of conducting primaries or elections or in support of performing his or her duties under this chapter on or after January 1st, 2023, shall immediately return the same to the entity which provided such thing of value within 14 days of the effective date. So I happy to take questions, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
I'm good. I'm glad.
Numbers.
Senator.
There you go.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the author of the bill. When you talk from line 33 on down to line 38.
Yeah.
Or references any county municipal government employee, or election official is taken or otherwise accepted from any personal contribution, donation, service. My question is, does this apply to the state election board and the Secretary of State who have received and made distribution of grant funds? I don't think.
If you will note, it says any county or municipal government. It's not related to the state, Secretary of State. It does not apply to the Secretary of State. It's targeted at local government.
So Senator, does the state election board and Secretary of State not receive grants to make distributions to municipalities?
The state election board does provide grants to municipalities or to counties. However, that is covered in the fact that you can receive those grants from the state of Georgia or the federal government. So if you look at lines 51, you will see that a superintendent can accept grants or gifts for administration of elections from any source other than, right? They have to accept it from the state of Georgia or the federal government, and that's true in section 3 for registrars, board of registrars.
Absolutely. And I think my question was to the administration of so many, of these previous bills penalizing the local municipality or the local county. However, I do not see anything talking about the state election board or the Secretary of State and their role and duties to preside over elections. In fact, through SB 202, the state election board could take over any local municipal board of elections. And so my question is, by virtue of this legislation, if there was a takeover of any local election board, then does the state election board have to follow these rules prescribed to a municipality?
The state election board is a part of the state government and would be providing the resources for those, through those grants.
But they could receive those grants is kind of my question.
The Secretary of State's office can receive grants or gifts from federal government or from other entities. And the state election board did provide guidance in how those would be equitably distributed. But it's not in this legislation. This legislation is very focused on local election boards receiving grants or gifts.
I guess my question is, if the state is doing it, and the state election board and the Secretary of State, I don't think this bill gets to what you're intending. Because it just goes through the state. It goes through the state election board now.
Let me say, the state election board, as an agency of the state, can then receive and distribute equitably funds to the local governments.
We hope so.
We hope so. But the third parties cannot directly contribute to the local governments. That's the crux of this legislation. So it would prohibit local election boards from directly receiving grants or gifts or funding from any party other than the state of Georgia or the federal government.
Absolutely, with the Secretary of State being a part of the state of Georgia. And my last question would be just simply, as a politician, the Secretary of State is an elected official and would accept campaign funds and campaign contributions. How do I know that the people he receives grants from aren't donors to his campaign to divvy out through the state election board?
That's a hypothetical, Senator. I think
I think this is
that,
hypothetical as well.
well, I think this is concrete. This is concrete in prohibiting third-party donations directly to a local election board or to a board of registrars.
But to the state is good. It's okay.
Well, to the state, it is controlled through the state of Georgia. So we have different sets of controls available to us. Via the state election board and the Secretary of State's office.
Anyone else have any questions? Number 11, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, do you know how much the state has appropriated to elections?
I do not, Madam Leader. The state of Georgia does not fund directly the elections. That's a local government responsibility. However, the Secretary of State's office from time to time provides grants to communities to support election operations and training. And
You don't have any idea how much those funds would have been?
I do not at this time, no, ma'am.
Follow up.
Sure.
Do you know how much the state receives from federal government?
Again, I think we're going to have to ask that from the Secretary of State's office and gain some insights from their operational people.
Okay, in the last elections, I know that many organizations contributed to elections. Do you have any idea of those organizations and who they might have given to?
I am aware that there were any number of third-party contributions to selected counties in our state, not to all. So my concern is they discriminated against some communities and rewarded others as a third party, a private third party. I would suggest that at least from news reports, it was quite a substantial sum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Chairman, one of my counties received some money from the Schwarzenegger Fund during one of the last 2 or 3 election cycles. under this legislation, if this group reached out, would this legislation require that that particular county put the Schwarzenegger individuals in touch with the Secretary of State's office? The funding would be made there. And then Secretary of State's office would, based on whatever parameters are established, determine where that money is best spent, best needed throughout the 159 counties.
Your local community could not accept the contributions directly. They would have to redirect them to the state.
Right.
And follow state election board processes and procedures. This legislation is silent
Right.
on the Secretary of State's responsibility for accepting or dispersing funds.
Right. This legislation here only prohibits local from accepting that type of money
Directly. Then they can receive it through the Secretary of State of Georgia, receive it through the state of Georgia or through the federal government.
Right, based on whatever process is established by those departments,
That
right?
is correct.
Thank you.
No other questions?
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to take input from witnesses. For the committee's information, we're working currently on a substitute for SB 221, and I hope to have it available later this evening, and we'll distribute that. So I'd like to limit our input to SB 222, because that's the bill we would like to have consideration for this evening. Now, do we have people online? Is that correct? So I would like to offer to for virtual testimony from last week, Dr. Wendy Taylor from Gwinnett County. Are you available, Ms. Taylor? Is Ms.
Taylor's
Taylor
not available? She's not available. She asked me to speak on her behalf. My name is Stephen Day. I'm a member of the Gwinnett County Board of Registrations and Elections.
Mr. Day,
And-
you have 2 minutes. You have 2
Yes,
minutes,
sir, but
Mr.
I
Day.
want to be clear that we were speaking about Senate Bill 122 and not the one before you this evening. So I don't want to violate your protocol. You tell me if I can still
Senate
speak to those
Bill
points.
122 is not a point of discussion this evening. And actually, SB 122 will be a part of the substitute that we will present tomorrow, and it will be Senate Bill 221. So you would probably best speak to that bill when it's available tomorrow. Mr.
Will you
Day.
be having hearings like tonight for that particular piece of legislation?
No, we will not. We'll have those hearings tomorrow evening at 6 p.m.
Okay, but I could sign up for that tomorrow night then. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Very
That's
good. Well,
correct.
All right,
Thank
that's
you,
what
Mr.
we'll
Day.
do then. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now, next up is Anita Tucker. Ms. Tucker, are you available? I see you on the screen somewhere. Ms. Tucker, would you like to speak to SB 222?
Hello, yes, good night or good evening. Again, just like Mr. Day, I had prepared to speak to SB 122. It's interesting. This is the second time we've tried to speak on these bills. Now it's going to be the third time, I guess, tomorrow, maybe, hopefully. There's some important.
It will be
things-
tomorrow.
There's some important things we need to get, that y'all need to know about these bills. And, you know, it's impacting everyone here that's trying to speak, just so you know. And I wanted to make a point of reference. The county boards of registrations and elections never receive grants or donations. All we do is we advise on the budget for the elections office. We never receive money. Just
Well,
to be clear.
that's good news, Ms. Tucker. Because that's exactly what we're proposing, that all counties follow your protocol.
I'm pretty sure they all do. But so
That's
we need to sign up.
Not
again.
universally.
Will we automatically be rolled over to tomorrow?
I will certainly allow that because you've been very patient. Later this evening, I hope you're on the distribution list. We will hopefully be able to put out the substitute for SB 221, which will have components of the bill that you have an interest in. So
Okay, because
221 is a composite.
Okay, I'd just like to say one more thing, elections workers need the full support of the legislature. And we need investment in resources so that we can do our jobs. That's the one thing
Thank you.
I'd like to say.
Thank you. Next on the virtual sign up is Dealey Smith, who is DeKalb County Board of Elections, the registrar and elections. Is Ms. Smith available? She did submit some written testimony. We have that. Ms. Smith, are you available? Hearing that she's not available, we'll move forward because I have her written testimony from the DeKalb County Board of Elections. Carly Smith, DeKalb County Board of Registrars and Elections. Ms. Smith, are you online? Oh, you're actually here in person. Well, we'd be happy to take your testimony. Please come up. 2 minutes. I apologize for the shortness, but we've got a lot of folks. There's fine. The podium's good. Thank you. State your name again.
Good evening, committee members. Good evening, committee members. My name is Carly Swift, and I am a member of the DeKalb County Board of Registration and Elections. And I'm testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 222. This bill seeks to restrict funding for county and elections offices and institute draconian punishments against elections officials. And some of the very same proponents of this bill are also advocating for onerous mandates for elections departments while simultaneously cutting off the very funding we could rely on to meet those demands. Even without the passage of these bills, counties are already being forced to bear the cost to maintain equipment that we were required to repurchase by the state to the tune of tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in extended warranty cost. In addition, we are now being told to replace poll pads, scanners, and ballot receptacles by or before 2024, which would amount to at least $1.5 million in unfunded expenses to DeKalb County alone. And this committee should be aware that pursuing grant funding to supplement operating budgets is a standard and ethical practice for county governments across this state. And contrary to the insinuation in lines 25 and 27 of this bill, once a county board of commission accepts funds and appropriates them, they lawfully become appropriated public funds. Most counties employ staff whose job it is to pursue and administer grant funding. To suggest that these funds, to suggest that those funds then be subject to appropriation by the state elections board reflects a fundamental lack of understanding of local government budgeting and would violate the terms of many grants. It is in fact codified in the DeKalb County's revenue administration policies to pursue public and private grants to across the spectrum of county services in order to reduce them and reduce the burden on residents and mitigate the potential effects of unexpected economic fluctuations.
15 seconds.
Therefore, I strongly am in opposition to Senate Bill 222. Thank you. And I stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Thank you, Ms. Swift. Omega Finney, Henry County Board of Elections. Are you online, Ms. Finney?
Yes, I
Are
am.
you? All right, we'll be happy to accept your testimony. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Omega Finney, and I currently hold the position of chair for the Henry County Board of Elections and Registration. I want to echo my other colleagues that I came prepared to speak about Senate Bill 189, and I was also present last week on Thursday and was unable to speak. And I was not aware that we would not be able to speak for the other bills today. I was one of the people that reached out and did not get any responses for any of the state senators that I reached out to. Speaking about how we did not get any responses or the late changes that we were not aware of. And it's very important that you hear from us as election board members because we speak for our election officials. We know they know what they do on the ground and you need to hear from them. I want to reiterate what Anita said. Election boards, we do not, and election officials, we do not receive direct grants. We receive monies from the Board of Commissioners. So this bill is not doing anything that is not already being done. We do not need this bill. because we do not receive direct grants. That money comes from the Board of Commissioners. I also just want to reiterate in this bill, there is no need for a felony to be done or to be appointed or given or put upon
seconds.
election officials if
10
something
seconds.
you think
Ms.
that is
Finney.
wrong to be done to them. Election workers and election officials are already being harassed. They deal with things on a daily basis, and a felony is not needed.
Thank you for your input. Thank you for your input, Ms.
I
Finney.
also, before I finish, I also want to.
Thank you, Ms. Finney.
Roll
Thank you,
over.
Ms. Finney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finney. Next up is Melissa Manro, DeKalb County League of Women Voters. Are you online, Ms. Manro?
Sir, she was unable to make it, but I believe she's done written testimony.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're gonna now take up any in-person testimony for individuals who were here on the 23rd but did not have a chance to provide that input. We're gonna start with Ms. Favorito. You have 2 minutes, Ms. Favorito.
All right, thank you. I'm Tamara Favorito with Voter GA, which has led the election integrity movement in Georgia since 2006. We now have over 20,000 followers on our outreach platforms. And Voter GA's many leaders throughout the state are supportive of all the election bills heard Thursday before the committee with very minor changes. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to let you know that we just submitted 2 documents for the record, and we sent them to all the committee members earlier today.
Thank you.
Now I'll speak specifically to SB 222. SB 202 did not ban counties from receiving indirect private money and did not ban complementary technical resources. And we've seen recently where county commissions have received private money and routed it to their elections divisions. In 2020, some Georgia counties accepting private money also gave third parties such as US Digital Response and the elections group access to our elections equipment. We agree with the latest revisions to subparagraph E on lines 40, limiting services provided without remuneration to individuals only. It solves the problems that have been encountered recently. Thank you for considering our comments and for continuing to work to secure our elections.
Thank you, Ms. Favorito. Next up is Mr. Garland Favorito. Mr. Favorito.
Mr. Chairman, I want to address the question that just came up in the statement that it's an ethical practice to accept private money to run elections. The second interim report from the Office of the Wisconsin Special Counsel, authored by former Supreme Court Justice Michael Doberman, established that the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative spent $400 million to essentially buy the 2020 election. Mr. Zuckerberg spent $330 million of that money to establish the Center for Technology and Civic Life, which he staffed with the policy director, David Proof, who authored the book entitled A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump. Much of that money was then used to establish policy and get out the vote efforts, provide complementary resources to control electronic voting systems, and to implement a drop box scheme that facilitated ballot trafficking in key battleground states. And we have the videos of that happening right here in Georgia. The ballot traffickers stealing the ballots to take a picture of them so that they could get paid. In Georgia specifically, the Secretary of State allowed $45 million to be distributed disproportionately to counties in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of both the Georgia and the United States Constitutions. So we certainly agree with this bill, and I do agree with Senator Morrow that really all private money should be banned, and that includes the money to the Secretary of State. But we thank you for the changes that you got. We think it's a really good bill.
Thank you. You have a question, Mr. Favorito? Senator Mallow, your 10. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming to provide testimony. I remind my colleagues of this all the time. I saw on the piece of information you handed us what the Wisconsin Special Counsel authored by former Supreme Court Justice. Where's the facts and data on Georgia? I don't live in Wisconsin. I was elected in the state of Georgia by the citizens of the second senatorial district to
Mhm.
represent them. I'm concerned about Georgia elections, not Wisconsin elections, and the information pertaining thereunto.
Well, thank you for the question. And for the last 2 years, Voter GA has done more analysis of the 2020 and 22 elections than virtually all other organizations operating in the state combined. So the answer to your question is on voterga.org, but in specific, the answer to your question in regards to the money for the Georgia, that is documented by the Capital Research Project, Scott Walker, and I'd be glad to get you that report to supplement what we've given you today.
And just a further question. You mentioned the Secretary of State. My question is, I assume you voted for the current Secretary of State because I had a candidate for Secretary of State and she lost. So clearly there was an overwhelming support for this Secretary of State to be reelected. So I'm having a hard time trying to understand, how you blame somebody that won statewide overwhelmingly.
So I think most of the people in the room know that the Secretary of State, and I am probably the Secretary of State's worst enemy in the state of Georgia. I don't normally like to disclose who I voted for, but I can assure you it was not the Secretary of State who's sitting here right now.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Favorito. We're going to move on to our next witness. Is Mr. Joseph Kirk available? He was here last time. Thank you, Joseph. Mr. Kirk, if you'll come, provide your input.
Sorry, of course, it closes as soon as I walk up here.
If you would, limit your remarks to SB 222 for this evening's comments.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. My name is Joseph Kirk. I'm the election supervisor from Bartow County. I always like to point out that I'm speaking for myself, not the board that I serve or any association I'm a member of. But Bartow did receive the CTCL grants in 2020. Just wanted to mention that. And that was a good experience. Thank you for the exemptions on lines 39 to 41. It's been like we brought up in previous years, and those kind of small in-kind kinds of things show partnerships from the community. And I really appreciate y'all exempting those from this bill. I've had a really hard time framing my testimony today. I get it. The idea of outside interference in our elections is scary. No matter what form the interference may take, whether it's financial interference, outside pressures being brought to bear on election officials in the state, misinformation, outside voters, coming to the state trying to vote in our elections, it's all things we need to protect against. However, the good news is the people in my profession are pretty well practiced these days. We've not bowed to impart influence from either side. Every direction has been coming after us the last 4 or 5 years. And I think we've done a pretty good job, actually. Even when we received the CTCL grant, there were no strings attached. It wasn't if you do this, we'll give you money. It was, if you'd like money to help with the things you're already doing, here it is. And that's probably the easiest grant I've ever applied for in my life. And the report was just, tell us how you did, what you did good with that money. Like I said, it was a pleasant experience. And just to point it out, money does not mean strings are attached. Some folks really just want to help. I'm not saying that for any particular group, just mentioning it. My memory of Senate Bill 202 was that election officials needed oversight from the governing authority of the county in order to accept money. And I thought that's what we were doing. I was a little dubious about it at first, but came around, thought it was a great idea, had a partnership with my commissioner, and it was great. So I'm not saying we can't fund our elections, at least not from my jurisdiction. What I'm saying is our profession of elections is evolving. We need help from everyone. It's not going to come from this chamber. It's not going to come from any specific office, but we need help from advocacy groups, academics, concerned citizens, everyone to get involved.
Thank you.
And this is what this looks like.
Thank you.
I appreciate
that. Next is Janelle Clodfelter. Is Ms. Clodfelter available this evening? All right, thank you. And then finally, Mr. Brad Carver. Mr. Carver, like to speak to the measure?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Brad Carver on behalf of the Election Confidence Task Force, we fully support Senate Bill 222, and we appreciate the efforts of this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. the time now is 8:42. We will take another five. Scott, sorry, I'd love to think it's 5:42, 6:42. I'm on somebody else's time. What we'll do quickly is see if we have other online testimony. Miss Riles, Marissa Riles, are you online? Miss Riles? Again, we're only talking about SB 222. Mr. Day, we've already discussed this with you, and you're going to have the opportunity to provide additional input on tomorrow evening. Mr. Sanders, Douglas Sanders, are you available online? And then finally, Christina Benjamin, are you available online? Okay, we'll make sure that these individuals have an opportunity to provide input on 221 tomorrow night. We've already heard from Ms. Swift. Is Ms. Battles here? Ms. Battles, Cindy Battles, you would provide us your input, please.
My name is Cindy Battles, and I'm the Policy Director for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Thank you, committee, for giving us a chance to speak. I want to bring up a couple of things really importantly, because we're talking about the State Election Board or the Secretary of State being in charge of grant management. The State Election Board has already discussed this, and they have already said they don't have the capacity to manage this program. Gabriel Sterling has stood before the Appropriations Committee and explained that they are running their elections with about half the staff of other states, so they're already severely understaffed. If anyone has ever in their entire life written a grant or done any kind of grant management, they'll know that it's a full-time job. And the Secretary of State already struggled to get reimbursement checks out to counties. In fact, Forsyth County had to go to its delegation to help. This body continues to pass unfunded mandates and restrict counties' ability to run elections the way that they need to be run. If we are not going to give the counties the resources they need to run the elections that we are asking them to do, then we're going to have to understand the infrastructure is going to crumble and our elections will not be safe and they will not be secure. Election supervisors are already begging y'all for help. There's not an election supervisor who has come and said, oh, hey, yeah, this works for me. As a matter of fact, 202, one of the biggest things they asked y'all for was not to pass the restrictions on grant funding. So I am standing before this board asking y'all to please, if you are going to continue taking resources and revenue away from counties, come up with another way to make sure that they have what they need, because the elections are costly. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Thank you for your input, Ms. Battles. We'll now hear from Ms. McCarthy, Marcy McCarthy. I would say, Ms. McCarthy, you've already testified once. You need to be very brief on this bill. You testified last week, and we appreciate it, but this is very specific.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for their sponsorship and leadership on SB 222, a bill that provides all costs and expenses relating to election administration being paid for by lawfully appropriated public funds. We're all here today because DeKalb County Board of Registration Elections recently announced it had been awarded a 2 million membership grant scheme from the U.S. Alliance of Election Excellence, and that the high-ranking employees of DeKalb County and its Democrat Party appointed chairwoman Board of Elections have conspired to intentionally violate the Election Integrity Act of 2021. We are in favor of SB 222 and look forward to its passing. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. We'll now hear from Betsy Kramer. Ms. Kramer, are you available?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here and allowing me to speak. My name is Betsy Kramer. I'm from Johns Creek, and I'm on the Election Integrity Committee, and I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Maria Borowski. Did I correctly mispronounce your name?
Marie. Yeah,
Marie.
that's good.
Good evening, neighbors, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I am in support of this bill. I just think that if we can fund Ukraine, we can fund our elections. So, right? We can certainly fund our own elections, and I am in support of this bill.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. We have one more witness. Vasu, help me. Abiraman, ACLU. And now, let me, before you hand that out, does that relate to SB 222? 100, how can that be? Because I looked at it and I don't see it. Give me a 1-minute explanation, Mr.
I will explain. Thank you, Chair Burns, esteemed members of this committee. I'm Vasu Abiraman, Senior Policy Counsel with the ACLU of Georgia. I'm a proud elections worker as well. I've worked over a dozen elections in these past 3 years with the new equipment. And my recommendation is just for all the policy in this body to center elections workers and local elections officials. Right now, the big 4 counties of Georgia, after Janine Evler retires in Cobb, they're going to have new directors who didn't serve in the 2020 election. There's so much turnover in this system, and we don't need to be putting more constraints on our system. What I would suggest is that what we have done for local law enforcement with the Less Crime Act from last year, where not only can local law enforcement receive private grant funding, but also this body passed a tax credit allowing individuals up to $5,000 off of their taxes if they donate to local law enforcement. You will see, Chair Burns, that list includes the Burke County Sheriff's Office, the last on that list. What I want to do is to ensure that Director Bo Gunn, who has done yeoman's work in Cobb County and the Secretary of State's office, that Director Bo Gunn in the Burke County Elections Office can accept the same grant funding that Sheriff Alonzo Williams can accept in the same county. I yield for any questions.
Any questions for the committee? Thank you for your input.
Thank
you. Members of the committee, we are at a point of making some decisions about SB 222. I believe we need to make an adjustment. Is that right? I recognize the senator from the great state of Columbus. That's right.
We all kind of de-annex from the state.
You want to become a part of Alabama? Ooh, certainly not. Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to draw your attention to line 18 of SB 222.
Thank you.
And just behind the first arc, where it says concert who are, make a motion that we strike members of the state election board or are, so that it would read then government employee means an individual, committee, entity, or group acting in concert who are employed by the county or municipal government.
Thank you. I have a motion to amend. Is there a second? Second. I have a second. Those in favor of the amendment, it's a friendly amendment, indicate with the uplifted hand. Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for that catch. We appreciate your diligence. All right, members of the committee, is there I'll entertain a motion. Is there a motion on SB 222? I have a motion from Senator Gooch. Excuse me. I have a motion from Senator Williams. Second from Senator Harbert. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Of course, Mr. Chair, there's always going to be further discussion from the senator from the second.
From the senator from Savannah.
That's right. And so just Chairman, just want to note my opposition to the bill as relates to local counties that may receive funding. It is imperative that when you take a measure like this, that there's a response by the Georgia General Assembly, and that will be in the next fiscal budget. And if we believe that elections are important in this state, a budget is a reflection of our priorities. They should be outlined and funded in the state budget. I've looked at the budget. Elections aren't funded in that budget. And so for this body to tell my local municipality, my local county, how to run their elections, who to accept assistance from and who not to, in my opinion, is an overreach by this body, because if this body would like to legislate that, they should also at the same time appropriate that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'd like my opposition to be noted as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate the senator from Savannah expressing his position. Is there any further comments? All those in favor of a do pass recommendation on SB 222 indicate with an uplifted hand. Chair sees 4. All those opposed, chair recognizes 2. The motion carries. SB 222 will be referred to the Senate as a do pass recommendation. That's the only business we have for this evening. We'll be dealing with SB 221 tomorrow. We're going to do our best to get that out to you as quickly as possible, but not later than 8 a.m. in the morning. Thank you for your time. Meeting is adjourned.